How much power did Gohan lose between Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super? Just how far did his power decline until he regained it before the Tournament of Power? In this video, we're going to discuss that. Hey guys, if you're new to this channel, then make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications, so you can see all of my videos and community posts right away when they come out. So joining me in this video today is someone you've seen on my channel in the past. His name is...
What's up guys, MJxTV here. Thank you for having me back on your channel, Mike.
So let's first get into the time skip between the end of the Buu saga and Battle of Gods, as well as Gohan's power during this time period.
So in the Buu saga, Gohan was regarded as the strongest unfused character by the fandom for many years, Mike, way before Super would become a thing. And even the Battle of Gods film, which came out before Dragon Ball Super, again, a lot of fans assumed that Gohan was the strongest. Now, we'll discuss the differences in a second between the movie and Super, but specifically in Super, it is told to us that Goku is number one. This is mentioned to us by Vegeta himself, saying that Goku is the number one fighter after he defeated Buu, because at that point in time, Vegeta sees Goku as the ultimate fighter, which is why he is now training in order to surpass him. This is in episode 2 of Dragon Ball Super. And in the actual fight with Beerus, where Beerus utterly shit-stomped Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Vegeta is actually in shock that Goku lost that fight, again indicating that Goku is stronger than him and in his mind number one, and he doesn't feel like anybody else on the planet can pose a threat to Beerus with Goku gone, which is why he pretty much makes himself Beerus' servant in a way to please him.
So this is also really interesting because we need to remember that at the time that this was taking place, there were two fighters who in the Buu saga were seemingly more powerful than Goku and Vegeta, with those being Gotenks and Ultimate Gohan, and yet we see both of them fighting against Beerus, and both of them get easily defeated, especially in the Dragon Ball Super version of the events, where Gohan is presented as so much of an afterthought that he actually gets taken out when Beerus slams Buu into him. So he doesn't even get his own direct defeat at the hands of Beerus, or the feet of him, at least in the movie. And then, it seems like everything builds up to Vegeta being the one to fight Beerus. And additionally, Vegeta's the only one who's able to actually land some blows on Beerus, and during this fight, we actually hear Master Roshi say, "Wow, Vegeta has surpassed Goku." And then at the end of the fight, Beerus makes note of Vegeta's power and says that you gave me a greater fight than the other Saiyan did on King Kai's planet. Again, all of this seems to be narratively and contextually telling us that Goku and now Vegeta are seemingly the most powerful fighters there, even more powerful than Gohan and Gotenks. So the question here is, how is it possible that Goku and Vegeta are presented as being more powerful? Do you think it comes down to the continuity that Super is using, and more particularly a difference between versions when it comes to the power scaling?
Yes, because you and I did a video recently talking about Goku's power in the Buu saga. There is a difference between the manga scaling and the Z anime. So in other words, Toriyama's vision versus Toei's outline of that arc. And what's interesting is, in the Z anime, they seem to want to imply that Goku, once he comes back to Earth and he's got his body back and he's ready to go fight up against Super Buu with Gohan, he does seem to be a lot stronger. You and I talked about the fact that he was able to fight characters like Gohan in Buu's mind, and it's hinted that these characters are the same as before, and Goku's able to fight him in just his Super Saiyan 2 state. And again, don't even get us started on all the statements regarding Kid Buu and his battle with Goku. So there's a lot of indication there that Goku is the strongest character in the Buu saga once he comes back to Earth. And what's interesting about this is, if Toei, when doing Dragon Ball Super, is taking Kai or taking the Z anime into account, that could also explain why Vegeta sees Goku as the ultimate fighter post the fight with Buu.
And of course, when it comes down to the continuity of Dragon Ball Super, that's a whole other discussion for another time because it gets pretty convoluted. However, I think Toei wanted to establish Goku as being the most powerful fighter at the end of Dragon Ball Z. Another thing is that I feel like with Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, it seemed like Toriyama and maybe those behind Dragon Ball were almost kind of trying to change or retcon some some of the scaling when it came to its characters, because we do have the line in not only the movie but also Dragon Ball Super where Beerus examines base Goku and says, "I'm not sure you could defeat Frieza." It seems kind of weird that Goku would be able to be more powerful than Gohan, who was able to decimate Super Buu like he did his ultimate, when Goku in his base form couldn't even defeat Frieza. And that seems to also carry over into Resurrection F because, again, there are multiple versions of this. It seemed like in the original movie version that Toriyama wrote himself that a lot of the characters, aside from Goku, Vegeta, and Frieza of course, were kind of nerfed going into this movie. You know, we see Gohan show up and he's not even wearing his gi, and we see during the course of this movie that Gohan actually struggles to transform into a Super Saiyan, which has given people the impression that Gohan is so much weaker than he was the last time we saw him, even in the Buu saga before he became Ultimate Gohan. And the same kind of goes for other characters too. You see, for instance, that Piccolo struggles to fight against Sashami, who is actually stated earlier to be somewhat comparable, at least in terms of rank, to Zarbon Dodoria. And yet, when you think about it, any of the Z fighters at that point should have been able to just reach up into the sky and wipe out all Frieza's soldiers in one blast.
Now, I do want to talk about Gohan specifically because he has a very different performance in both the movie and in the anime version of this arc. In the movie, he has to save Piccolo, and Gohan goes Super Saiyan. And once he goes Super Saiyan, he's able to take care of this character. And that's about it. He goes back into his base form, and then he gets KO'd immediately by one of the most suppressed forms of Frieza. And right then and there, you can kind of tell that these guys are pretty much just fodder. They're jobbers. Now, in the anime version, this is where things get a bit interesting, and you and I, alongside Dragon Ball Nation, did a video talking about this. We talked about the fact that Gohan may have not have been that weak when you factor in his Super Saiyan form and his Super Saiyan 2 form, but he could not hold those forms and he could not maintain them, which did hinder him. And what's interesting is he goes up against a character called Tagoma.
Now, we all know that I like Tagoma as a character. I even did a video where I said that Tagoma outshined Frieza in his own arc, which you can check out here. And the thing is that Tagoma is a character who I feel like many in the fandom have actually kind of underrated in terms of his power. Now, Tagoma didn't really do much in the way of conventional training when he was with Frieza. From everything we know, it seems like Frieza repeatedly beat this guy up for 4 months, torturing him to the point of near death and then having him heal. But as we've seen with Saiyans, this seems to have a very beneficial response when it comes to a fighter. And as a result, Tagoma was able to go from his weak Zarbon-esque level to being so powerful that he was effortlessly one-shotting characters such as Piccolo. Now, as we know in the Cell Saga, Piccolo was actually more powerful than Super Saiyan Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks after he merged with Kami. And then Piccolo went into the Hyperbolic Time Chamber and was probably more powerful than Semi-Perfect Cell after that, considering his performance against Cell Juniors. And then after that, Piccolo trained for 7 years in the Buu saga, and then potentially up to 5 years, where we are right now in Resurrection F if we go by the movie timeline. As a result, this means that Piccolo should be at least somewhere comparable to maybe Super Saiyan 2 Gohan from the Buu saga, if not a lot stronger considering his feats that we see in the Universe 6 tournament, particularly against Frost, who is more powerful than base Goku. And yet Tagoma was able to easily beat down Piccolo, and pretty much immediately after this, Super Saiyan Gotenks shows up and headbutts Tagoma at full force, and this took him out temporarily, but it didn't really seem to do any lasting damage. And one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that Tagoma after this point actually reveals that he was holding back the entire time.
You what?
And somehow, someway, Ginyu's able to utilize his full power. I guess Tagoma's body works different than that of Goku's, I guess. So Ginyu's able to bring out his full power, and Ginyu again is just a beast because not only is he making Piccolo his boy toy, but he's making everybody there his playthings.
I'm not your boy toy.
So Tagoma is insanely powerful, and with Ginyu, he's able to bring out all his power, and he's able to just utterly shit stomp the Dragon team. And as you said, Gohan has to step in, go Super Saiyan, and he has to be able to take care of this. And this all goes back to Piccolo. One of the major arcing points of that video with Dragon Ball Nation is the fact that almost every version of Dragon Ball literally tells us that Piccolo never stops training. That's like one of the most consistent things amongst Toriyama's vision of Dragon Ball, is that Piccolo never stops training. And again, he should be astronomically more powerful in Resurrection F than what he was in the Cell Saga. And as I said earlier, he's nothing to Tagoma. So again, that just goes to show how strong this guy is. And something that is really interesting about Gohan as a Super Saiyan is that he cannot hold this form. I think that's one of the big things about Gohan, is that even though he may be weaker than what he was as an hypothetical Gohan in his ultimate form post Buu Saga, his Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 form should be able to bring that out, but he cannot maintain the form.
Now, as we know with Gohan's power throughout Dragon Ball Z, despite the fact that he wasn't constantly training like Vegeta and Goku, the thing is that his power was always building, and that's because of his hidden potential, which is a hidden reservoir of power that Gohan is unable to tap into because of his years of not training. So pretty much every time that Gohan stops training, what happens is that his external body begins to atrophy, however his power within himself only continues to grow and grow. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that also plays a factor in here, because he says he can't maintain this power. So because he doesn't have ultimate anymore, he might be tapping into a massive amount of power that he wouldn't normally have had before when he was a Super Saiyan. And I think this ties into his performance against Tagoma, because not only was he performing a feat in his base form that would seemingly be impossible for him in, say, the Buu Saga, but at the same time, the fact that he goes Super Saiyan and just wrecks Tagoma, who has been training with Frieza for 4 months, who can easily one-shot Piccolo while he's also suppressed, and took a shot from Super Saiyan Gotenks, who is more powerful than Goku in some of his forms, kind of shows us right there that Gohan's power couldn't have dropped to being weaker than he was, say, in the Buu Saga or the Cell Saga in his equivalent Super Saiyan forms.
One thing you and I touched upon in the video with Gohan and with Goku, they tried to utilize a lot of martial arts elements. Like an example of this would be Jiren. Jiren loses the will to fight, so his power decreases, his stamina decreases. It's very similar to that of like Naruto, where chakra matters and the will to fight matters, and all of that plays a factor into this. And Dragon Ball has always been rooted in that, the Japanese culture, martial arts, the Eastern philosophy, that's all been there. And I feel like with Gohan, one thing that people have to remember is not only was he presumably weaker just because he hasn't been doing anything, as you and I talked about before we started recording, this time skip versus the one between the Cell Saga and the Buu Saga, Gohan was still growing into a man. Like he, got stronger bones, he grew into a bigger body, so he maintained a lot of that strength. He wasn't as strong, but he maintained some of it. And Super, he's becoming more of a scholar, he's taking on jobs, he's like a speaker, he doesn't live in the woods anymore, he's out in the city, he's a completely different person. And something that you've been mentioning during this whole ROF section is that he constantly doubts himself. He doesn't have like any confidence in himself. So again, I'm not saying all of this matters to completely, make up for Super's writing, because it is inconsistent, but that is something to take into account, is that he was really not in the right mental state and he hadn't been training.
Gohan's greatest weakness for me has always been his mental state. It's always been him doubting himself. It's always been him saying, I can't do this. We see in early Dragon Ball Z, Gohan runs away from battles, such as during his chance to take out Nappa in the Saiyan Saga. And so this has always been something that has been haunting Gohan throughout his entire time in the Dragon Ball franchise. And this was something that I thought that they did a really good job during the episodes where Gohan and Piccolo are training before the Tournament to Power, where Piccolo kind of tells Gohan about this, where he kind of tells him how whenever you would get significant power, your overconfidence and your mental state was the thing that defeated you. That's why you failed against Cell, at least initially, which cost Goku his life, and that's why you failed against Buu, because you allowed your mind to defeat you. And when Gohan got his mental state back to where it was, that's when he finally tapped back into his ultimate form. That's when he was able to perform such incredible feats of power, such as what we saw during his fight between him and Goku, where Gohan pushes Goku to use Super Saiyan Blue, and then Goku goes all the way to Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken, takes out Gohan, and then Gohan is still able to throw a punch before collapsing. In the manga version, you can argue this is even more crazy, where Gohan was able to fight Kefla to a stalemate, and both of them eliminated each other during the Tournament to Power.
When it comes to Toyotaro's depiction of that arc, as you said, Kefla, or otherwise Kale, which is one half of that fusion, was a monster. She was eliminating characters left and right, she took out Ani Raza, and at one point, she even saved Caulifla from Golden Frieza. Now, it's interesting because Golden Frieza is a character who is known to constantly suppress himself, so we don't know for sure if he was going all out, but the fact that Kale, even before getting all the power boost that she would get, initially stomped Golden Frieza and saved Caulifla and Kaba from him, and then would go on to fuse with Caulifla, create Kefla, a character who Jiren and Goku stopped fighting, looked over and thought they might have to get involved in, and then Gohan just comes in and says, "Dad, let me handle this." So yeah, Gohan is a beast in Toyotaro's version of the Tournament of Power.
So in conclusion, I think we've demonstrated that although Gohan lost power, what diminished the most was his conditioning and mental state. But despite that, his hidden potential only continued to grow, until now when he's more powerful than ever before. What he does next is up to Toriyama. Let's just hope he puts that power to good use. So how much power do you think Gohan lost? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like this content, you can help support LSM on Patreon, a link to which is down below in the description. Make sure to subscribe and enable all notifications, so you can stay up to date with all of my videos. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.